Welcome back to our next session here at Formnext 2024, here at the industry stage. I'm very happy that you zoomed in to our next highlight. Today we have a new format for you and a new highlight guest for you. He just joined the managing board of Siemens AG, has a long experience as the company's chief strategist. He works on building an ecosystem of partners and customers and academia to address the global challenges. His key focus lies on digital transformation for companies. Who better could be here today with us than Peter Koerte. I'm very happy to have you here. It's a pleasure. Peter Koerte is CSO, CTO of Siemens AG. Peter, first of all, congrats to your new position. How does it feel to be a new boss of a 70 billion plus euro company? How does it feel?
It feels great, simply because if you think about technology, it's evolving even faster. So it's not just the digital realm, everybody talks about AI and so on, but it's also what's happening in the hardware and the combination of hardware and software. So I think it's the golden age of technology. So I think the timing is just perfect. I love it.
So there are so many employees looking up to you. Don't you feel the pressure on the tasks ahead?
No, it's as long as you can give clear directions, because the world becomes a little bit more complex, as we know. So we get a lot of crises around the world. We got, of course, hyper competition coming from China. We got over-regulation in Europe. We got potentially new tariffs in the United States. So the world becomes complex. And there's not simple solutions. So people usually look at you and say, you know what, give me a simple solution. Unfortunately, there's none, but we can work on it to solve these problems that are coming our way. And I always believe that technology, if used by the right people, will make a difference.
Okay, you walked around this morning. You had some time. You are a very busy person. That's a reason why we are happy to have you here. But when you walked around Formnext, what were your impressions? What did you experience? What was your task to go around?
Well, my number one question to everyone was, where are we in the maturity of course, additive manufacturing? Are we still in this long journey where initially we said, well, this is for rapid prototyping, this is just for one-offs? Or are we already, have we crossed the chasm to say it's really fully industrialized and we're there yet? And I have to say, I'm really impressed. I saw great examples. Of course, you always see these wonderful pieces, one-offs that are super high-tech that you use in particular aerospace defense. I mean, think about all the space, all the nozzles for the rockets. These are great examples. And they're going to stay, and they're here to stay. But if we really want to grow the industry, we have to industrialize it. We have to make it simple. We have to make it at cost. We have to make it at quality. And I've seen great examples. And so I am very impressed and I'm very encouraged so far about where additive is going.
And where is the maturity of Siemens, talking about AM? I know Siemens has invested since some years into AM, but where do you feel your own business and what maturity level?
Sure. There you have to differentiate between, number one, Siemens is a user of AM, so we got we got 249 3D printers ourselves, which we use extensively for all kinds of applications. For example, for trains, so that you don't have to have a lot of stock. So we can produce them, on order, so that you build to order and reduce inventory, which is fantastic. We have what we call internally an additive manufacturing network, where we can also then ship orders or move orders around the world, depending on where it is needed, Australia or Asia, and then Europe and the United States. So we use it a lot. So therefore, I'm always curious to see where's the next frontier, where we can do that. But then also for our customers, of course, which is most important. What we believe in is to bring the two worlds together from the design. So early on, really thinking about how can you design for additive manufacturing. And then, that's the dream, after all, push the button and then you get it down to the control, to, of course, the automation equipment. And then you can manufacture that part with no any chasms in between for data and so on. So that's what we provide.
So what do you think in the future would be the biggest part of the business for Siemens, talking about AM? because you have so a broad product range and product, not only products but service solutions. So where do you focus, or do you hope to? Okay, do you try to get everything up, but maybe you focus more on the software side?
It is what we say. AM is, to us, it's not a technology, but it's first and foremost, it's a mindset, right? Because if
you don't earn money with mindset.
No, but what I'm trying to get is with the mindset is you have to think holistically. If you only optimize the piece on the machine, that's fine, but it's not going to get us scale additive manufacturing. What we have to make sure is that already the designer, as you build and design the piece and the part, you already have additive in mind, that you actually understand of what is needed. So it takes the two of them. It takes the design, the engineering side of things, and it takes the manufacturing of things. So that's where what we call digital threads, they span from engineering all the way to manufacturing. So it's really both. And we believe you have to have both, otherwise we will not scale the technology, because the technology has to become simple and easy to use. And if you only focus on one piece, it's not going to work.
And that is a business model for you, because the users should come to Siemens. I want to understand where you focus on earning money. So the users should come to you and have an easy access to the engineering and to the design part, right?
It is. So first and foremost, we equip all the machine builders, right, that are here. So for example, with SLM, Nikon SLM, we work very closely together with all the major manufacturers, the OEMs. We provide, of course, the controls, but also we provide the software for designing, designing the work pieces that are eventually being built. So it is where these two worlds come together, and to make them successful so that their customers can produce faster, more resilient, more sustainable.
And can it be a business model for you as well to provide the software designs as well on a platform for an international growing business, that you are the data wrangler in the middle of the business?
We always have the debate. However, it turns out that when it comes down to the design data is something very proprietary.
That's the center, isn't it?
That is central. I mean, that's for most engineers. They would argue, my design data has to stay with me, and I will not share that with anybody, because that's my IP, right? Sometimes patented, sometimes it's not. But sharing design data is extraordinarily hard. However, what you're getting at is libraries. So if I have a library where you can start already with parts that are pre-designed, that's great. And this gets us into the conversation about AI, generative AI. For example, with Siemens NX, you have a couple of generative design features where you can tell the system, if you want to build an end effector for a cobot, let's say a gripper for a battery, then you can say, build it for me with these dimensions, with this weight, and then actually the system starts to design the piece. And why am I telling this? Because the design of that very, very end effector looks like an alien. It looks definitely not very symmetrical, because it's optimized. It's optimized by whatever you choose. Usually it's strength and durability and weight. And so these pieces, very often then you have to do 3D printing. Yeah? So you have to 3D print, because the value is not so much the cost, but actually the value is the functional properties, in this case weight. And you can reduce weight up to 80–90%. Reduce the CO2, because you need to have less energy with the cobots manipulating. And all of this, as you can tell, this really comes together.
Yeah, and that will be what part of the Siemens business you are running. So I want to know how big will the AM business be in your job as a strategist. You have a lot of. I didn't tell all the responsibilities you had because time is running fast. So is AM one of the others, or do you expect it so much growing that it will be your most important part?
So the way we think about this is we have what we call 11 core technologies, and it is one of the 11, next to the usual suspects of AI and data, of digital twins, of connectivity and edge and these pieces.
And they all
they're all
together.
connected. They all eventually are all connected because they draw off from each other, right? As I said, with AI, if you can create better design, that's actually also a good thing for additive manufacturing. So we really look at it from that way. However, I shall say also, it's not just about technology, it's what we see right now with sustainability coming, with all the regulations coming, and the requirements for material and reuse of material. This gets a big boost. So it's not just driven out of technology and digitalization, it's also driven by outcomes, by of course, improving your footprint.
Let's have a look at the overall market. Siemens will not invest in a market. What you expect in the next 5 years will not grow. Which figures, which data can you share in the overall markets, and could you divide it a little bit? We this morning talked a lot about looking at US, looking at Europe, looking at China, and we have the partner country. I wanted to come at the end, but maybe you can add the Australia as partner country as well, because you're responsible for EMEA as well.
Right. So we believe that the market today for additive manufacturing is about 15 billion, 1.5. Growing at 15 to 20%. So that means that by 2030, this market could be a 40 billion market, which is very sizable. And if you look around in bigger nowadays, 15 to 20% you don't find that often. So it is actually one of the fastest growing or faster growing markets that we see. Yeah. Second, it is really evenly distributed across all major geographies. So Asia is third, Europe is third, United States is third.
And will stay so?
We shall see. We don't know. But the nice thing about actually additive manufacturing is about the resiliency that comes with it. So I'll give you an example. This was fascinating. We were sitting together with a furniture manufacturer. Yeah? These furnitures, not sure where they're coming from, Vietnam or China, I don't know. But the point though is with 3D manufacturing, you don't need to ship them anymore. Because if you have your microfactories, all what you have is your powder in the beginning, and then you print them based on energy, yeah, and all the intellectual property that goes into it. But what I'm trying to get at is, you can produce it literally anywhere, and you don't care about tariffs, you don't care about broken supply chains, you don't care about inventories, because this is selling this season, but next season it doesn't, so you don't have to host hundreds or thousands of them. So what I'm trying to get is, with 3D printing, you eliminate all of this, right? So it's really resiliency of supply chains that is fascinating, and that is also, because you mentioned Australia, think about in Australia, but we have a lot, there's a lot of energy. It's actually geographically quite, separated. But 3D printing can bring a lot of industry also to Australia. So therefore, I think it's a great
But that fits for all markets, for all the world. I wanted to get to the point where you as Siemens might invest a little bit more, or where our audience can learn, you should look at this market or that market, or maybe we think about moving out, or not maybe too fast, but we don't want to invest in this or that market. That was the point I wanted to get to, because as a global company, you always have to look, okay, you have just one money, as my mother used to say, and where to spend the one money.
It's true. So we just announced a big acquisition we want to make, or we signed. That is Altair. They're here too, by the way. And what Altair is doing is they provide a lot of simulation methodologies, in particular for electromagnetic and nonlinear designs on simulations. Yeah? And so they are a perfect match to what we today provide as a very comprehensive digital twin, because after all, the idea is we design and simulate everything in the digital world. We optimize it many, many times. But once we think this is perfect, then we still have to bring it in the real world. So, and there we need to have the manufacturing technologies, and additive is one of them. And turns out, Altair has very, very strong portfolio also for designing for additive manufacturing. So this is a great example where we invested, where we are investing a lot. But I shall say that this is us as a supplier to this industry. The interesting thing is, for this industry, for additive, where are the future growth markets? And there's always a big chasm. The chasm is that you get away from these one-offs, what I said in the beginning, but really you start to scale and see this in-line production. And I get this as CTO, I get this since 4 years. Always the question is, when will we see additive manufacturing become industrialized? And there we see, of course, the usual suspects such as medical equipment, aerospace defense, energy applications. Think about gas turbines, making them, burn hydrogen. These are the usual suspects everybody knows. But there's new ones coming. And the new ones are actually the ones that really scale. For example, I just saw a great example for car manufacturer, where you have these seat brackets in the car. This is a pretty basic, boring piece of metal that you would think you would never do 3D
Don't
printing
say
on.
them.
That's right. But in this case, it is, if you compare it to a nozzle of a rocket, it is a pretty boring piece.
I got it.
Always depends on how you compare. And turns out, in the meanwhile, we can do this much cheaper and faster with all the benefits that I mentioned. But the key point is cheaper with 3D manufacturing. So we see now applications emerging in automotive. We see applications emerging in phones. I just was with one manufacturer who showed the hinges, which are produced. They produced 4 million parts in 4 months, and they all go into your phones as you hold them. Yeah? So that's massive. And then you see all the bikes, right? So all of that starts to scale. And I certainly believe additive is more and more crossing that chasm to scale up, industry by industry by industry. So we see it coming.
Scalability is the buzzword for me. This morning we discussed which industry sector will grow most in future, and I stated, okay, it could be defense, and the both guys here on stage said, oh, don't compare it to medicine. Medicine will be much more business in future, and my point was the scalability in defense. Is a crucial factor speaking for AM right now. What's your opinion on that one?
Very much so. So what we see is, unfortunately, the trend around the world, everybody is investing into defense, Germany included. And in Germany, because this is very often it's a very German conversation, we have this very ambiguous feeling about defense. Defense is absolutely important. It's crucial for our security. Every country is like that. And so every country is investing massively into defense, as is Australia, as is the United States, as is Europe, and we have this conversation with the Ukraine war. And defense is perfect for additive. Why? You have a lot of high strength durability applications. They're usually not super high scale. They're usually required resilience of supply chains, so you can produce them locally. And then lastly, you have to have the ability to manufacture that over the entire life cycle of whatever you produce. Yeah? And that means usually hopefully, this equipment is out there 20, 30 years, however it breaks. So you have to, have spare parts and all of that. 3D manufacturing is perfect. It's just perfect for defense industry.
Can you add numbers or expectations about that market? What in terms of growing numbers?
I don't have them, but for sure
it is not easy to say because it's so special.
For 3D manufacturing, for sure it's special. Yeah, on a global scale, I would have to look it up.
Let's have a look at some very special applications in additive, like bioprinting, for example. There are some researchers who want in future print organs and tissue and something like that. Are you investing in this area as well?
So we don't, because we don't build the machine.
It's not your core business because you have Siemens Healthcare.
Exactly.
That would be their business, or would it be your business?
No, so what I'm trying to get is so if you wanted, and by the way, printing is not just for organs and tissues. So in particular, food supply is very interesting, right? So you could print your steak. Yeah, I mean, and in Singapore we do. It's just very expensive. And the question is, how can you drastically lower cost? I think it's going to follow a little bit. The use cases usually are more in industry right now, but eventually...
It's a very future-oriented.
It's a very future one. So we don't, as Siemens, and also not as Healthineers, but I let the Healthineers speak for themselves, but we don't invest into that part. But we invest into digital twins. And digital twins, like what I said, with nonlinear simulations, skin is a very nonlinear thing. Yeah? You can actually, it's very elastic until it rips and breaks. And so again, with Altair, we are now able to do these nonlinear simulations. So theoretically and practically, we can simulate humans too, right? And we do this already. We can do this for cartilages, bones, Healthineers does it now for the heart. So the idea after all is, yes, to have a simulation of the digital twin of the human. And then, of course, the next step as an industry would be to manufacture these pieces too.
Everything most of what we are talking about is or is not possible without partners. And you mentioned you walked around, and I think I heard on your program we're visiting some partners. And I read about that you have a new partnership with Stratasys, and it's all about Navigator. Just give us some sentence about what is the core of this cooperation, and are you open for other companies? Are you open here for contacts from our audience?
Yeah. So as I say, additive manufacturing is getting now into a stage of industrialization, and what that means is usually you reduce the variability, and there is emerging a clear trend of what the best practices are, right? If you allow me to digress, and then I come back to your question. If you go back 100 years from today, there were more than 150 car manufacturers. Today, there's just a few. And at the time, it was huge variability. It was everybody doing their own thing. Fully integrated. There were no standard procedures available because everybody had to learn this new technology called the car at the time. Today, we produce 90 million cars every year, and it's super specialized. You have everybody's supplier, and so on. In a way, this is what you see around here too. It is that industrialization where you see a lot of variation, and it's really hardcore Darwin. It is variation and then it's selection. And we are in this selection state now, where we're going to see those who survive, and they scale, and not only do they scale in volume, but they scale in processes. And what we want to help with is with the MI Navigator, so the Additive Manufacturing Industrialization Navigator, is in a partnership with EOS, with Stratasys, with HP, with many others, to help manufacturers that want to do 3D manufacturing to really industrialize it. And so we have built a maturity model in there, which guides you from a scale from 1 to 5, and you can really say, how am I with my design? How am I my processes? How am I my quality? How am I with my people?
That's a fact for the companies joining you, or is it possible for users and for all the companies watching us?
So, twofold. One of which is together with the companies I mentioned. Of course, we standardize these processes, and then for all the users, this is an offer to use it.
That was the point I wanted to get to. It's not a closed shop.
It's not the opposite.
It's not your 5 will have a bright future. No. I thought it's like an offer for the community, right?
It is an offer for the community. The more, the merrier. Again, it is really making that precious knowledge available widespread, so that we can make everybody, scale up faster, industrialize faster.
And do you already have for every aspect you need in this community? Do you have for every place you need a company, or are you still looking for? Because now we have a broad stage here. You could announce what you need still.
So far, we're good. I'd say the first step, but yet again, if you are happy to join that, this is the key insight in the digitalization space is ecosystems need to be open so that everybody can contribute but also benefit from. And we are more than happy to have these conversations as you listen to this too.
Okay, so that offer is clear, I think. Last question, short answer. Do you already have a small 3D printer, your private hobby workshop?
I don't, but we have a makerspace, and once in a while.
At home?
No.
Then it doesn't count.
Oh, okay, no.
Just at home in your private workers.
No, today, since I just moved, I don't. But I definitely would need one, because very often I have these plastic pieces that break, and I would love to have a 3D printer at home.
It's the same with me. Yeah. So we take some time after our session, go around and find one for our private working shop at home. So thank you very much for having you with us and for your time spending here on stage. Dear audience, that was our highlight interview this morning for you. If you want to look at our interview because you joined in lately, then you can have access at LinkedIn page, and there you might have the one or the other comment, or you want to get in connection with Peter and his colleagues. So the next highlight here on stage will be our AM panel, Science and Research as an enabler for industrialization, and I hope you will zoom in then. And now I want to have a last big applause for Mr. Koerte here on our stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you.